Hi, my name is Paige, and I'm going to walk through how my group decided on how to select a new restaurant location with the application using 1000 Minds. Using this program allowed us to figure out which location was best to select based on the information that we inserted into each of the categories. So first we have here is like the setup of the program. So you can tell right above here that we have, the which restaurant should we buy to manage. So that's a question that we're asking ourselves in what do we want to do to determine the restaurant we're going to end up selecting in the end. So here we have the model name, which is the which restaurant should we buy to manage. And then you have the activity mode. So there's three different types of activity modes here, and we can see that there's the preference values, ranked alternatives, and the selection. For our purposes, we want selections because we want to be able to put all of our alternatives into the program to be able to look at what the decisions would give us. Right below too, we have the question of the three hypothetical alternatives to prefer. This will also be in the decisions section, and we'll go through that later on. So next we have our criteria. This is where you want to label all the criteria you think is necessary for your decision. It has to be from the lowest to highest rank, or it won't give adequate data or make sense in the end. So for example, our first criteria is location, and you can see it is ranked from the small sized city to the large sized city. This is done throughout, in which later will be displayed in our decision section. So to have these in the smaller to larger, this allows us to have adequate data to display later on. So our first one is location. You can see that that's one of our criteria. In the next slide, you'll see the cost at the end here. So cost was there, and then our profit, which we had from lowest to highest. So our low annual profit, our average annual profit, and our high annual profit. We did this throughout with a few other criteria. I won't waste a lot of time going through that because we had quite a few to go through. So then we had demographics for household income, and then population, and then finally we had another location in which we went from having the size of the city to like kind of the location of the area. So standalone business and outside business strip mall or inside the large shopping mall. Next, we have other factors. Other factors are just things that aren't going to be included in your criteria when you get to the not the decisions, the alternatives portions and the ranked alternatives. This will be displayed in the next slide to have a better understanding. But with this and our other factors, we decided to use new customer reviews and changes to be made. So it's important to see that in the 1000 Minds that we're able to add these other factors that aren't incorporated with the criteria. Next, we're displaying alternatives. Since I have such a small computer screen, it's kind of hard to get all this displayed into one and not be so scrunched together, so hopefully it's not blurry to be displayed. So here we're setting up the alternatives to have the ranked alternatives later on. Here we want to be able to see and choose what we want for our alternative and then the location area. So here we have Applebee's, Buffalo Wild Wings, fast food takeout, Olive Garden, open a new restaurant, or Panera. So these, when you click on them in the application, this little drop down area will open up where we had the smaller size, medium size, or large size city. And that's where you can select if it's going to be that small, medium, or large, and then it will display in the column. And then same with like the cost too. It's the same idea as that we had the cheap, average, or higher priced, and those were all ranked from the lowest to highest. So we did this throughout to display in what we wanted for the criteria. And then for the new customer reviews, we just entered in what those were. As we go through this, you're able to document and display what works best for that restaurant that you think will happen. Here we have our decisions. So in this part of the model, it's hard to see, but above this in my screenshot, since I have that small screen, it doesn't display it all, but when you're going through this, you're gonna either click this one or that one, basically is what this is, or if they're equal to you. So when you're looking at it, it's the question of earlier in the slide we were talking about which 3 alternatives or hypothetical alternatives do you prefer, and that was in the very first, in the setup section, which I stated that we would see this in the decision area. So here we have all of our alternatives displayed, and you're going to hit this one or that one, and you're going to go through all those alternatives and whether it's going to be one of these or the equal one. So after I screenshot all these, I went through it and selected all of them, and at the end it just tells you that you've generated basically the final of that. So next then we have our preferences. This is the area the data will be displayed to evaluate between each of the criteria. So first you're able to decide what you want displayed in these graphs. Whether it's the percentage values, which is stated right here, instead of the integers, bar graphs showing the values, score boxes for printing, and criteria ordered by relative importance. Obviously we don't need the score boxes for printing because this is the group assignment and we're not printing it off, we're doing the presentation. So here in this first section that you're going to see is that there's bar graphs displayed here, and this breaks it up down to see what is more of a better option and what we should manage or purchase for a location for our restaurant. So we got our population area, our location, our household income, demographics, and profit. On the next slide I have the additional alternatives we had. I just couldn't fit it on the screen there. So this will give us all the data that we need to kind of determine which restaurant we want to manage. Here's that slide that has the other ones on it. Don't have to go too far into this. We have other criteria here, so then this is going to just show you like a ratio breakdown, and this one right here, the marginal rate of substitution or the relative importance criteria. So they just are good to have to really get a better idea of what you think is going to be the best for your restaurant. Here's another one. There's a lot of the breakdown here of each of these graphs allows us to have that better decision, and that I found that the bar graph was the easier and best or more helpful in determining which restaurant we wanted to choose. And that's just kind of more my own personal opinion on that one, and the 1000 Mind programs is a little bit easier for me to understand with that. Here we have the ranked alternatives. So here we can decide what we want displayed again, just like in the alternatives section. You have the show level numbers, your percentage of total scores, and then show order of alternatives were entered. Here we only wanted the percentage of total scores, so that's going to be right next to this rank column, and then it has a total score. So right here we have 54.9% going to opening a new restaurant. This is easily done. It'll display that. You can rank the alternative based on the criteria you have inserted. The total score is going to show us the best alternative in selecting what restaurant we should open. And so looking at what the criteria we have here is displayed with the rank that we should open is the new restaurant. Next we have the selection. This is the final kind of area where you're going to decide on what the alternatives you want to choose. This is a neat little area, I thought. It's just easy to display on like what you're selecting and rejecting, and you're not trying to just determine between the two and not have really a chaotic area that you don't really understand what kind of selection. And it still displays your total score as well as the alternative and what you're choosing. Above here we were able to choose like what X or Y axis we want to use if we're using a chart, and like what kind of size, as well as like the bubble colors if that was important, and what kind of alternatives you had. When you have right here is the check mark, and the X, that's telling you with the check mark that's what you're selecting, and then the X is going to show you that's what you're rejecting. And that's displayed by these colors here. So the selected ones are the Buffalo Wild Wings and Olive Garden, which are in the yellow, and then the rejected are which in the gray, which is the Applebee's. That's just is easier for us to understand on which one we want to select, and is a great way to break that down. So finally, yeah, I had a lot of fun doing the Thousand Minds program. I never used one before, so it was great to kind of learn and able to share with like how our project went as well. It's a great way to incorporate group work to go through a question and go among different sections to select the best decision based on the criteria and alternatives that were displayed.